Notre Dame going to the national championship game, taking down Penn State in dramatic fashion.
A big name at quarterback has just officially become available.
The quarterbacks are in. This is as healthy as these teams are going to be. So who's got the advantage?
We are talking playoffs, and now that he's here, it is time for Justin Herbert to show the world what he's made of, outdueling C.J. Stroud.
Miami's season has been much more chaotic than imaginable, so to help us make sense of what's happening with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Tyler Hero, we're joined by Rowan Notcarney.
Ohio State must do whatever it takes to beat Texas.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Notre Dame going to the national championship game, taking down Penn State in dramatic fashion.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I said before I got on, I just had to make sure my heart still works, and good enough, it does. I'm still trying to process everything. The end of that game was complete madness. Once Notre Dame failed to score there when they had the ball late in the game, I'm thinking, man, this is going to overtime. I'm already thinking ahead to, like, are we going to have a debacle in overtime where we're just trading off 2-point conversions? I do have a tendency to think worst case scenario. And then right as I'm thinking all that stuff, Christian Gray gets the interception. It was actually Notre Dame's third interception of the game, the first one that counted because the first two were negated by penalties. And sure enough, Notre Dame sets up a game-winning field goal. Mitch Sheeter, who has had just a really up-and-down season, came through when it mattered most and gives the Irish a 27-24 lead. And now the Fighting Irish are natty bound, and it's still hard to process. Like, saying it out loud, it honestly feels impossible given what this team has had to deal with.
Brian, your thoughts?
Well, considering some of the random stats that we were talking about before the game and the way Notre Dame just got ran over in the first half, I'm shocked they won. I thought they were going to lose by double digits. As I told you and Kenton prior, Penn State had 17 runs of 4 or more yards in the first half, and Notre Dame just 3. Notre Dame was outrushed by over 80 yards. Notre Dame lost the turnover battle, but yet they won. Those stats don't really make sense for a program that Marcus Freeman constantly says is a line of scrimmage team. But that's college football.
Yeah, it was incredible. Kenton, as this game's playing out, and we'll talk about the pass interference calls throughout the show at some point because everyone's got takes on them. They were something again in this game. But Kenton, your thoughts on the game, host of Locked On ACC. So you're obviously familiar with the Irish. You did the show with me after the first one, but your thoughts as Notre Dame is headed to the national championship game.
You're damn right I'm familiar with the Irish's game. And you know who else's game I'm familiar with? Riley Leonard and Drew Allen. Everybody told me, Ken, you're biased. There's no way that Riley Leonard wins this quarterback. I specifically said this game, I think at the line of scrimmage may be a wash. Maybe Penn State has an advantage. Maybe Notre Dame. I don't know. But what I do know is in the quarterback battle, there is definitively a better guy. And that guy was Riley Leonard. Everybody told me Drew Allen's he's going to be a top 10 pick this year. He would have threw his 10th damn pick if the referees weren't calling pass interference every time a Golden Domer got their hands on the ball. I watched the tape. I've seen Riley Leonard get better and better and better as the season goes on. I've seen Drew Allen stagnate and just be who he is, no better, no worse, all season long. And I said, stagnating against the Al Golden defense with this type of talent. Good luck to you, buddy. And ultimately, what was it that cost Penn State? Oh, it was that top 10 pick. Look at that. Look at that.
Yeah, it's Drew Allen had a tough day. It was. I mean, look, he couldn't even complete a lateral pass at the end of the game. He threw that thing way out of bounds.
That was hilarious.
Yeah. Honestly, like, one of my least favorite things, but also favorite things about the end of games is typically that lateral. I was not feeling the want to watch that. I felt like I had to almost close my eyes as it was playing out.
That was
because
painful.
I just didn't want to see like the disaster thing happen. Now, he did throw the ball completely out of bounds for no reason the play before that, so that made me feel a little bit better. But, yeah, for the second week in a row, I think that, like, the second game in a row for Notre Dame, this like 8-minute window where, you know, they scored 17 points in the last game in 8 minutes, the end of the first half, start of the second half. This game, Angeli comes in, leads them down the field. They get the field goal. Then they get the touchdown right away. The game is tied 10-10. It really, like, as good as Penn State was in the first half, the way that first drive of the second half, it felt like then this was Notre Dame's game, for me at least.
Yeah, without a doubt. Going into this game, Notre Dame had outscored opponents 145-10 in the middle eight. And once again, the middle eight was critical to Notre Dame coming back and winning this game. Like, there was a point there when Penn State was up 10-0. Notre Dame had nothing going for them. It felt like their starters were dropping like flies at one point. And throughout the rest of the game, Charles Jagusa, who had not played a single snap all season, he tore his pec in preseason camp. Like, the first week of preseason camp, had to come in there and play significant snaps in this game. Plus, Steve Angeli came in there at the end. And yet they still won the middle eight, and that gave them a chance to win this game. It has been something that Marcus Freeman and the coaching staff have prioritized really since Marcus Freeman took over. Saw it as a main priority throughout the season. Came up once again, because if Notre Dame does not get that field goal going into halftime, I really don't think they win this game. So for Steve Angeli to come in there, lead them down the field and get that field goal, like, it really took everyone for Notre Dame to win this game, and it was enough. Now Notre Dame's headed to the national championship.
All right, real quick, hand up. Who thought they should have left Steve Angeli in the game?
Well, I thought.
Okay. 2-2.
Did anybody not think that Riley was concussed or something like that? Just the way he left.
That was a hard hit. And even when he got up, he was pretty wobbly. When they said he was coming out in the second half, I thought, are you just doing this as almost as like a service to what he's done all year? And look, I understand that Riley Leonard has been very polarizing among Notre Dame fans, but that dude gave everything he had really all season long, and it really all stems from the really poor performance against NIU, which I've said all year has been inexcusable. But that guy just gave everything to this team. And at the most critical moments of the game, late in the game, I thought it was really interesting that instead of giving the ball to Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame just said, hey, Riley, give us a few yards to set up this field goal. And he did it. Like, that guy, he's not a great passer. I think we can all agree about that. But that guy gives everything he has every time he steps on the football field.
Well, I want to say something here. In terms of the health situation, yes, I did think, okay, if the health is like, if that's a concussion, which I thought it was, and he couldn't go, yeah, absolutely. But in terms of watching that game and saying, you know what, who do I think gives him the best chance to win if he is healthy, all things considered, in terms of Riley Leonard? Riley Leonard, no doubt. Riley Leonard, no doubt. There's so often people say, oh, it's the intangibles, it's the things that you can't measure and all that, when in reality, a guy just stinks. But I knew that Riley Leonard had it in him to make the big plays in the big moments, and did he not in this game? Did he not? I didn't say that Riley Leonard was going to need to go 35 for 40, 400 yards and 4 touchdowns to win. I said that the quarterback battle was going to be a few little moments here and there. One guy's going to hit, one guy's not. And repetitively, the guy without the name on the back of his jersey and the dark blue jersey was the guy who could not hit the broadside of a barn. So Riley Leonard did enough to get this win. I thought he played a hell of a season all year. He's had his ups and downs. He's had his struggles. Listen, I was a guy that was high on him coming in, and then after that NIU game, he was so bad. I said, I don't want to see no more one-year transfers at no school, including NC State, including Notre Dame. I don't want to see it, But with that being said, like I said, he's gotten better. He's gotten better, and he hits in the moments where you absolutely need it, and there's something to that.
Brian, I'm curious. We'll start with you here. What do you think was the most impressive part of this game for the Irish? Because there's a lot of different moments, big drives, things that you can pick apart from this game that were the most impressive. So, Brian, what do you think was the number one for you?
Third downs. Notre Dame was 11-17. They were 8. There's no nice way to say this. During the season, they were atrocious on third downs. Atrocious. Not bad. Atrocious. Penn State gave up 34.5% third downs going into the college football playoff. That flipped. Notre Dame converted almost 70%. That's your ball game, because Penn State, they were pretty awful. 3 out of 11. By the way, that's another point about what Kenton was saying prior to the game, and kudos to him. Drew Auer ran a few times, did a few nice things. He just doesn't have the intangibles with his legs third down and short. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Katron Allen or Nicholas Singleton, but Notre Dame's defense in the second half rallied the ball, protected the edges a million times better, and they just killed them on third downs. That was the game.
Ken, what about you? What do you think was the most impressive part for Notre Dame?
The most impressive part is for Notre Dame has to be the group that we talked about all year being the best for Notre Dame. This secondary is crazy. I don't even want to think how good they would be if they were healthy. My God, you're missing a first-round pick, and yet you still put receivers in Guantanamo Bay. I mean, this is what Denzel was talking about when he said 23-hour lockdown. These boys, I have not seen a performance as good by a secondary as I have seen by these guys in quite some time in terms of in a big game, in a game of consequence, in a New Year's Six Bowl, in a playoff bowl game. Because this here, I was legitimately like, okay, Drew Aller is not good, but also, damn, can his receivers get any separation? I mean, you could have put those receivers in a loveless marriage and they couldn't have got any separation from these DBs. Those DBs were stuck to them like glue. So I look at this game and I say, everybody talks about the Notre Dame secondary, how good they are so much that they're starting to not get the love that they deserve, because this was not good. This was not pretty good. This was fantastic work by that secondary.
They didn't have a receiver catch a pass.
That's insane.
Harrison Wallace had,
I've never heard of that.
had like a negative 3-yard gain, but it wasn't technically a catch.
Oh, backward, yeah.
Yeah, their wide receiver.
But I mean, seriously, name a game in your life at the Division I level where you've heard that stat that it wasn't an option team. No offense to Navy and a team that actually tries to throw. I've never heard of that stat. And this is in the Final Four of the playoff.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. Looking at the wild card round, the Eagles favored at home over the Packers. There's usually an upset in the wild card round, and a lot of people are picking the Packers, but not FanDuel. Philly, 4.5-point favorites in this one, and that line moved early. It has settled in at 4.5. Packers almost 2-1 on the money line, plus 198. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
A big name at quarterback has just officially become available.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Consider this a breaking news episode because reports have just surfaced. Carson Beck, former Georgia Bulldogs starting quarterback, Carson Beck is entering the transfer portal. Now, Beck had previously, kind of like Cam Ward did a year ago, he had declared for the NFL draft, but as we discussed this morning on a new episode of Locked On Canes, and by the way, the timing for this news couldn't be any crazier because we just had a conversation about Beck, Quinn Ewers, and others this morning. As we discussed, even though Beck had verbally, online declared for the NFL draft, he had until January 15th to fully make his decision. That was the drop dead date. So Carson Beck is opting out of the NFL draft with 1 year of eligibility remaining. And the fact that he's entering the transfer portal means he's probably not staying at Georgia unless, Georgia is really desperate and they negotiate with him, whatever. But if he wanted to stay at Georgia, he probably would have announced he was staying at Georgia. He's hitting the transfer portal. Already there are links coming out for Miami. Pete Thamel, who's a pretty well-connected reporter at ESPN, said per an ESPN source, Miami looms as the favorite to land Carson Beck. Couple more details on Carson Beck, Thamel wrote on his X account. The timeline for a choice is within a week. So Beck wants to get this done relatively quickly, whether it's Miami or somewhere else. Because again, Pete Thamel may say Miami's the favorite. That doesn't mean it's automatically a Miami lock, okay? He says Beck will not be able to throw until March, and he's expected to miss spring practice. He'll be good to go, though, well before summer camp after elbow surgery. So Beck, we've talked about this on Locked On Canes. He, of course, as you guys know, if you watch the SEC championship game, as most of you did, he injured his throwing elbow. He has since had UCL surgery on it, similar procedure to one that Brock Purdy of the 49ers has had, and he recovered relatively quickly from that. But I was kind of wondering about that because some reports right after the Beck surgery had claimed he might be ready to be full go by spring, but according to the Thamel report, Carson Beck would have to miss spring football. So that would be, not ideal for wherever he lands up. Not necessarily a deal breaker, though, right? Because I don't know if any school who's needing a quarterback is going to look and say, well, if you can't throw till the summer, we don't want you. I think in the case of Miami, they have clearly been looking for an upgrade at the quarterback position. Thamel added, while Miami looms as the favorite for Beck, a source said that Beck's camp intends to listen to all potential suitors for the best situation. Quote, it's a strategic thing, not an emotional thing, the source said. Now, I think it's safe to say Carson Beck's emotions, though, will probably lead him to Coral Gables. That's why he's keeping an open mind here, because if you go strictly based on emotion, as we've talked about, his girlfriend, his significant other, is Hannah Cavender. Plays for the Miami Hurricanes basketball team. Now, she is in her final year of eligibility for the Hoops team. So she, would not still be playing, next year when Beck would be theoretically playing for Miami. But, she, of course, would be around for the upcoming semester. And she will, I imagine, probably still live in Miami after she's done playing basketball for the women's team. So Carson Beck's emotions would probably take him towards the Miami Hurricanes. And, my thoughts on Carson Beck, I love his experience. You're talking about a player who has performed in some of the biggest games you could possibly play, big stages in the SEC. Miami's current quarterback room with Emory Williams heading into his third season and limited actual playing time out there. He's made 2 starts and a few appearances in relief. Judd Anderson heading into his second year with no collegiate experience yet. And Luke Nickel coming in as a true freshman, obviously with no collegiate experience yet. Having somebody who fits that profile of a Carson Beck with 1 year of eligibility remaining could be a really good bridge quarterback, potentially bridging that gap to the guy that I would think, just based on the pedigree he's coming in with, who'd probably be the most ready to be Miami's starter in 2026 would be Luke Nickel, who's going to be a true freshman in 2025. That's a tough situation to be in. I believe in Luke, but starting a true freshman, it's risky. Having someone like Carson Beck to bridge that gap could really be a beneficial thing for the Miami Hurricanes. Now, if Carson Beck ends up at Miami, don't expect Cam Ward 2.0 because Ward is one of one. But in the case of Beck, he has an opportunity, and it's why he's decided to play one final year of college ball. He has an opportunity to raise his draft stock the way Cam Ward just did. So Ward a year ago was getting back day 3, maybe 4th round NFL draft grades. Took a gamble on himself, played a final year of college ball at Miami, put up ridiculous numbers, and had obviously the defense let him down, but Cam Ward had a tremendous year here, and now he's being talked about as the number 1 overall pick in the upcoming draft. If you are a big name quarterback and you're getting a 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round draft grade, and you can have that opportunity to make likely a 7-figure NIL deal somewhere to play 1 final year of college while you raise your draft stock, potentially from the 4th round to the 1st round, the way that Cam Ward did, that ends up being a gamble that is potentially worth taking. This is not in the pre-NIL era where you're theoretically not making money to play college football. Something like this would be an unconscionable decision to make. But in the case of Carson Beck, he can 100% benefit from this. Now, Miami is in an interesting spot here, okay? Because, I think that another quarterback who may or may not become available in the upcoming days, who I think the Hurricanes could very well be interested in, would be Quinn Ewers. There's no guarantee, though, what Ewers is going to decide to do. I don't think he's got a spot on the Texas Longhorns next year because they're ready to start the Arch Manning era officially, but Ewers could decide to go pro. We're going to see how the next 2 playoff games go for him. If Ewers lights it up against Ohio State and wins the semifinal and wins a national championship, suddenly he might start getting the first round draft grades that he may not be getting at this point. But, if we can sit here and say, hey, you know what, if it's between Quinn Ewers or Carson Beck, maybe Ewers is the guy that we like. If you were to wait for him to maybe or maybe not become available, that is a gamble that may not be worth taking, especially when Carson Beck has set a week-long timetable to find his next school. So I would say the next 24 hours or so are going to be really telling. Do we hear about Miami potentially setting up a visit with Beck? Do the reports of mutual interest, like David Lake at InsideTheU.com has already reported mutual interest between Miami and Beck? Do those reports intensify? If they don't intensify, then maybe that means Miami is holding out for something or someone else. If those reports do intensify, and I'm talking to you less than an hour after Beck announced he was hitting the transfer portal, we're already seeing these reports linking him to Miami intensifying. But if they don't, that might mean Miami is looking in a different direction.
The quarterbacks are in. This is as healthy as these teams are going to be. So who's got the advantage?
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Jalen Hurts on track to play, practiced in full yesterday. Jordan Love practiced in full yesterday. We expect those guys to be ready to go Sunday. Great. We don't have to worry about that. We don't have to play the games. But both teams tried to play the game for as long as they possibly could. TJ Slayton returned to practice yesterday, limited. He told reporters after he is good to go. It seems like we're trending toward Evan Williams and Quay Walker also playing. And if you saw, AJ Brown didn't practice yesterday, he is expected to play. That was a day of rest just to give him some rest so he could be fresh as possible on Sunday. Though, of course, these guys didn't play last week, so how much rest do they really need? I wanted to dig into the matchups today. And I know we did that a little bit with Louis DiBiase yesterday. Go back and listen to that if you missed our crossover. But I think I wanted to get even granular. I wrote a piece yesterday about this Eagles defense. I think there's just so much to talk about here. I was like, should we do an interview? But I feel like in these moments, what I personally want to talk about is the things that are going to determine the outcomes and dig into them. And not that we couldn't do that with a guest, but I just felt like this was the best way to handle this in this particular situation. So for when the Packers have the ball, let's start there. This is truly strength on strength, about as strength on strength as you're going to get in a matchup. The Packers are the 4th overall offense by DVOA. The Eagles defense is 1st. This is the 3rd passing offense by DVOA. The defense for the Eagles, 1st. This is the 3rd rushing offense for the Packers by DVOA. The defense is 2nd. So strength on strength. Now, when the Packers have played good defenses this year, varying results. 31 points against the Lions, but they started slowly. 29 points against the Vikings twice, but they started slowly. They started a little bit faster against Houston, but had some early turnovers. It's been a mixed bag. Now, I will say the Eagles offense, and we'll get to the other side of the ball in the second segment, but the Packers have played 7 games against top 10 defenses by DVOA. This is not new to them. They have played plenty of good defenses this season, and this just happens to be a style of defense that the Packers are very familiar with. The quarters, the cover 6, the 2 high safeties, the middle field disguises, the man match. The Packers, I went back and watched that week 1 game, and look, Avonte Maddox versus Cooper DeJean, there's differences to be sure, and that offense looked different then, and the Eagles defense looked different the whole first month than it has the last 2.5, 3 months. But at the same time, the Packers, I really liked the game plan offensively. And I think that's going to continue. What I wondered to Lou was, do you think they'll change some of their man coverage tendencies? And I asked a longtime defensive coach about this. And he said the same thing basically that Louis said. And that is, I think they're going to do what they do. They're probably going to play man coverage about 25% of the time. That's what they do anyway. They're a league average man coverage team. So to play man coverage at a league average rate would not be surprising. Now the Packers are going to have a plan for it, because this is a very good man coverage defense with Quinyon Mitchell and Darius Slay and Cooper DeJean. But that's going to be third downs. That's going to be red zone. It's going to be specific. And if you're Matt LaFleur, you have to plan in any event that against almost any team in the red zone, you're going to get more man coverage than you might otherwise. And on third down, you're going to get more man coverage than otherwise. I don't think this is going to be some out of the ordinary game plan for Vic Fangio. Now, what's interesting, and this was actually what I brought up to the coach that I was talking to, was this Eagles defense loves to use simulated pressure. In fact, they are one of the highest simulated pressure users in the NFL. Top 5 in simulated pressure. Simulated pressure is where you're showing a bunch, 6, 7 guys, make it look like they're going to come, make it look like they're going to bring pressure, and only 4 do. But guess what? It may only be 2 defensive linemen, and you may drop 2 out, or you may drop 1 out, and you may say, so you're going to only send 4, but it may not be the 4 you're looking for. And the point is to, and we talked about this with Joe Thomas a couple weeks ago, to test the rules of your opponent's pass protection schemes. What's interesting is they show pressure and don't bring it like all the time. They are bottom 10 in 5-man pressures and bottom 2 in 6-man pressures. They don't bring extra bodies. They show extra bodies, but they don't bring extra bodies. Now, their 4-man rush can be very good because Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, these guys can win, Milton Williams can win one-on-one opportunities. And when you're showing 6, 7, and only bringing 4, that offensive line has got to sort it out. They may hesitate for a second, and all of a sudden that's enough for Jalen Carter to just be by you. And that's part of why this pass rush is able to do some of the things that they are able to do. Jordan Love, the numbers against the blitz are not great over the course of the season. The last 5-6 weeks, they've been much better. Do they amp up the blitz rate? It seems to me that if you're the best defense in the league, you shouldn't feel necessary to change anything. So I don't expect that they will. What the Packers are going to have to do in a game like this is start fast. And you say, but Peter, they have not done that this year, particularly in big games. That is true in big games, but on balance this year, the Packers are 9th in EPA per play in the first quarter. So maybe not the first drive, the first quarter. If you listen to our crossover, you heard Louis DiBiase mention that the Eagles are horrendous in the first quarter. That's true. They're even worse. The Packers are 9th. The Eagles are 24th in first quarter EPA per play. Now, in quarters 2 through 4, they're a top 10 team in EPA per play. So if you're going to start fast, it will be a bigger advantage for you against the Eagles than it may be against some other teams. You know, the Lions, they're no stranger to starting fast. The Vikings, they're no stranger to starting fast. The Eagles, they kind of are. They went down 9-0 to the Ravens. Now, they came back and won that game. Some fumbles, some weird things happened. But weird things happen in the playoffs. Now, the thing that I want to bring up here is we talk about some of the issues that Matt LaFleur has had with these teams starting slow in losses. But let's not also forget, we like to retrofit narratives based on what happened. So they lose a game and you go, well, they started slow. We forget that in the games they won, they started fast, right? They come out a bespoke game plan against the Seattle Seahawks in 2019. Tyler Ervin package, all the Devontae Adams double moves. Last year, same thing against the Dallas Cowboys. It's the play off the play. They came out like gangbusters. They come out. It's Aaron Jones running the ball. They get Romeo Doubs, double move here, double move there, shot play here, Jordan Love extending the play, creating something off platform, touchdown, interception, touchdown, and now they're rolling. The Packers in games that they've won, it's been these Matt LaFleur, we've got something special for this game kind of game plans. And I think when you go back and you look at some of the failures of the Packers offense in the playoffs, it's been 2019. They're a 13-win team. Now, I know they know against the 49ers, they were just outmatched in that game. 2020, they're awesome offensively. They just didn't feel like they had to change anything that they did. They didn't have a bespoke game plan because they just thought that were one of the great offenses of this millennia. In 2021, Aaron Rodgers the MVP. What, we got to change against this team that we scored 30 on in the regular season? They did not have that sort of same approach. Last year, they had a plan for the 49ers. A good one. They had a plan for the Cowboys. A good one. In the game against Detroit in particular, I think they got a little lucky against Kansas City. Some just like S-tier plays made by Jordan Love and Christian Watson and like the lucky fourth down. Like there were some things that got a little weird in that. They came out and just blitzed. And I don't mean that from a defensive standpoint, the Lions in Detroit. They connected on all the shot plays that they tried to take. A lot of the stuff that they've been trying to do this year, it just all worked against Detroit. I expect them to have a specific game plan, unscouted looks, things that they've been saving because they're playing free and easy. They're playing with house money. They're the 7th seed. They're going to Philadelphia to try and upset. All the pressure is on Philly. I love going to live sports events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. I have fond memories of going to theater growing up, going to sports with my family, my grandparents. Really helped me fall in love with football, the energy, the excitement. It's unforgettable. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
We are talking playoffs, and now that he's here, it is time for Justin Herbert to show the world what he's made of, outdueling CJ Stroud.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Daniel, this is what it's all about. Justin Herbert suffered a plantar fascia injury, a sprained ankle on both sides, all just to get here to the playoffs. And now it's time for Justin Herbert to shine. Get that first playoff win. And it's all about controlling CJ Stroud, getting all kinds of pressure on him, making things and life extremely difficult. And then, of course, we wrap things up with our bold and game predictions.
Absolutely. We talked about it yesterday on the crossover. Two very similar teams, but the good thing is it's very easy to see how the Chargers can pull this off because they struggle with a lot of the same things that they do. But this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. David, for Justin Herbert to be at this point in his career with only having one playoff appearance, before this, his second playoff appearance in year 5 for him, it seems hard to believe when we've watched every game. But the Chargers got him here with, some wiggle room as well, getting to 11 wins. They made it easily. They are the 5th seed in the AFC. And for most of the season, they didn't need him to be Superman. They probably wanted him, him to have to do a little bit less because he still had to kind of take over and be the offense for a big chunk of the season. But now it's the playoffs. Now it's do or die. It's win or go home. And now I don't think it's too much to ask for Justin Herbert to put this team on his back on Saturday and make sure they go out there and get a win, because we know that he's capable of doing it.
He absolutely is, Daniel. We've seen it throughout this season, especially the latter part of the season where they kind of let things go a little bit in his favor. And Greg Roman said, hey, I'm going to stop beating my head against the wall and running the ball on early downs. I'm going to go ahead and give the ball to my all-world quarterback and let him orchestrate the offense and let the offense flow through him. And what do you know? You see much bigger yardage totals. You see a lot more success, and you see more wins because Justin Herbert is that good. And so it's imperative that they continue to allow Justin Herbert to cook. And one of the ways that they do that with great effectiveness is utilizing play action. It got you here. You got to continue to use it. 72% completion percentage on play action and 8 touchdowns for Justin Herbert. The Chargers use play action 26.4% of the time this season. I want to see that ratcheted up quite a bit in this game. It is one of their biggest weapons, and it has to be used to beat the Texans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously the play action is always important, but like not knowing what you have at wide receiver in this game, I think plays a factor in that too, because we know that Joshua Palmer is out. Quentin Johnston, you'd think mostly with an illness, because that's when he stopped practicing, is questionable for this game. I like to think he plays. He probably plays, but what level of play is he going to have, right? Like, what version of him are you going to get? So Justin Herbert, potentially without, 2 of his top 3 receivers, something that CJ Stroud's going to be dealing with as well, has to put the team on his back. And I think it's about coming through in the big moments, picking up a first down with your legs if you need to, right? The Texans have allowed 33 yards at least to quarterbacks 7 times so far this season, and 2 out of the last 3 games. And I do think he will need some help, right? The Chargers line has to give him some time. And if they do, he's basically perfect. I mean, per next gen stats, Herbert, 18 pass touchdowns and 0 interceptions when not under pressure in 2024. He's the first qualified quarterback since 2016 to have 0 interceptions when not under pressure, because that's when they created a next gen stats. If he's not pressured,
good, Daniel.
And we said it before, I mean, if he has time, he can make it work with Walmart employees if he has to, right? He can shred you with anybody. But you do hope that they do give him something. And I think the biggest question mark going into this game is what you're going to get from your run game, because it would be great for him to have at least a little support and at least an efficient run game, while also trying to find the fine line of not forcing it either.
For sure. And for the Chargers, like, their success this season is tied directly to their rushing output. The Chargers are 2-6 when they do not rush for 100 yards. In all 6 of the Chargers' losses, they have ran for 94 yards or less. So the running game has to get going. And I strongly believe J.K. Dobbins will play. I think they're just still trying to do the load management with him because he's coming back from that MCL sprain. So the running backs obviously have to be a major factor in this game, but also Justin Herbert, as you mentioned, has to be involved in the running game as well. It's all hands on deck. It's everybody contributing in this facet of the game, which obviously we know makes your play action that much more effective because they have to account for the run and the pass. So getting that running game going, not beating your head against a wall, but utilizing it to great effectiveness, especially late in the game to salt the game away. You have to be able to run the ball when they know you're going to run it. That's about bringing that physical lunch pill attitude to this game.
Yeah, and the Texans are a pretty good run defense, right? They're not someone you can't run against, but they're pretty good. I'm at 11th in yards per game allowed, 9th in yards per carry allowed. What I would say, though, is they do rank 25th in 13 runs of 20 plus allowed. So they will give up some explosives, and that's why you hope so much that J.K. Dobbins can go.
Yes.
I wish I was as confident as you. He definitely seemed like he tweaked something in that last game, but it didn't seem to cause him to go out of the game. I don't know if they'd put him as questionable if it was a load management situation, but I have to think that if he can go, he's going to go. Will we see Ezekiel Elliott? I don't know, right? Gus Edwards, it's funny because we thought Zeke might have been insurance for Gus Edwards, and now it's looking like it's more about insurance for J.K. Dobbins, who's questionable more than anything. It'll be interesting to see who they put out there, because when all 4 guys were healthy, Kimani Vidal was inactive. So is it going to be Gus, J.K., and Hassan Haskins? Will they bring up someone like Ezekiel Elliott for short yardage, goal line stuff? You'd think if you have Gus Edwards, you should be better in those situations. But I would say also, I think it's about the Chargers interior just holding up and doing enough. Like I don't need it to be perfect, right? Like I truly don't. And they're going to have struggles in their interior as well. But I like the group they should have out there, right? Zion Johnson off the injury report later in the week. Rashawn Slater, thankfully, off the injury report too, obviously on the outside. But Zion Johnson and Bradley Bozeman have improved throughout the season, and they've gotten better towards the end of the season. You probably have Jamari Sawyer starting at right guard, even with Trey Pipkins going to play more than likely. That's who's been starting at practice, according to Daniel Popper. They just have to do enough, David. They basically the Houston Texans' strength are on the outside. They're edge rushers for sure. Tim Settle, though, can still get some pass rush. They still have some guys, sacks. Mario Edwards for sure. But you just can't let them wreck the game. If you give Justin Herbert some time, if you can have that communication, pass off the stunts and things like that, and just give him a chance, you're going to have a decent offensive day, in my opinion. And I think it's up to those guys to step up to do it.
I agree completely. Yeah, that interior has to just do enough to be able to give Justin Herbert time to be the surgeon that he is, because we know if he's given time, as you know, the stats that you provided illustrated, he can make it work with pretty much anybody. And he is a quarterback that loves to spread the ball around. If you're open and you got a jersey on, he's going to hit you. That's just what it is. And I think one of the guys that he likes to hit a lot is Ladd McConkey. And I think one of the things they have to really do in this game is to use motion to give Ladd McConkey more free releases. I'm sure the Texans are going to probably try to use Derek Stingley Jr. on Ladd McConkey in some of your key moments, right? So one of the things I've seen all year that the Chargers have done to kind of give Ladd some help is to move him around and get him going on a free release. If you can't get hands on Ladd, he's almost impossible to cover.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it yesterday, just, how Ladd, especially with the uncertainty with the wide receivers, has to step up. Even as a rookie, you have to call on him to do it. I think it's up to the tight ends as well, right? I mean, I'm agreeing, a lot of motion, up the motion if you have to. I mean, you've been pretty disciplined as far as no penalties and things like that, especially recently. They've been pretty clean running that operation. But the tight ends have to step up as well. And it's not just the passing game, it's also the running game too. I do hope we see an uptick of Stone Smart, a couple of very athletic linebackers on the other side. On the other side, with Alshire coming back this week from that nasty suspension he got from the Trevor Lawrence hit, you need it's all hands on deck. So you need all those groups to step up if you're going to have a good offensive day against what has probably become an underrated defense, honestly. But
from big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. Looking at the wild card round, the Eagles favored at home over the Packers. There's usually an upset in the wild card round, and a lot of people are picking the Packers, but not FanDuel. Philly, 4.5-point favorites in this one, and that line moved early. It has settled in at 4.5. Packers almost 2-1 on the money line, plus 198. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Miami's season has been much more chaotic than imaginable. So to help us make sense of what's happening with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Tyler Hero, we're joined by Rowan Nodkarni.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are joined today by Rohan Nodkarni from NBC News to help us take a look at this Jimmy Butler situation from a different angle. Just so our audience knows, Rohan, you have a bit of a relationship with Jimmy Butler. You've covered him for a number of years, written stories about him for Sports Illustrated and for GQ.
But before we get into all that, what is the budget for Miami Heat podcast intros? It's like, I don't know if, whether it's the other ones in the market. I don't know if I'm allowed to say their names on here or not. We all know what they are. David's saying no, but
Dan Le Batard show, etc. Yeah.
It just feels like all you guys, I don't know if you're like, this is the reason you guys are skipping out on healthcare, but it just feels like there's a lot of effort put behind the production value of just the intro music here.
It's a network brand.
Every time it throws me off. I see. Got it.
That's right.
Got it. Okay.
We're just part of a broad network to bring you coverage of your favorite team every day. And
okay. I had to, as a consumer, I just had to bring it out. I'm not just a I'm not just a guest, I'm a listener, so I had to get that off my chest.
We have a soundboard here. We have all the accoutrements, things that we need to provide the best information possible, Rohan. So listen, like I said, you've written about the guy. Mm-hmm. You spent time with him at the Miami Grand Prix. You've been to Big Face Coffee.
That's true. Yeah.
I do. Going back to the Miami Grand Prix, we could just start there.
Uh-huh.
That's where Jimmy Butler made that comment about it would have been different if he were out there against the Celtics or the Knicks. And of course, that ended up being the comment that Pat Riley was asked about during his press conference. And he, the quote that will ring throughout Miami Heat history, that he should keep his mouth shut. There's been a lot of talk about blame and how all of this has went down. What are your thoughts on how this has gone down?
I just think this goes back to the summer more than anything else, because I think if the Heat's plan was to never extend Jimmy, which I think that seems like their plan. I think their plan has been to not extend Jimmy Butler, and we can debate the merits of that. I think eventually we'll talk about, kind of where the Heat go from here. And I think when we talk about that, I'll kind of give my case why I was pro extension. And again, you can argue whether or not that is a smart contract, a good contract. But this really all starts with the extension, right? And I think obviously from Jimmy Butler's perspective, he felt like he earned that extension. You look at some of his peers in his age group, whether it is Kawhi or Paul George or even Kevin Durant, these are all guys now playing later into their 30s who've kind of gotten the contract that he's seeking from the Miami Heat. And I think, there's a lot of talk, and we're all tweeting at each other about it. We all kind of clearly have our personal feelings, and I think it's obvious where we all stand. To me, even if you want to take blame out of it, the genesis of all what's happening right now is what happened in the summer when the Heat decided they both were not going to extend Jimmy Butler and not going to trade Jimmy Butler. Now, Wes, you and I talked about this for a long time. Like last time we spoke on this podcast, we kind of had a chat before and after, what's led to this situation. To me, if the Heat didn't want to extend Jimmy Butler, the idea of bringing him here, and having him play out this season was a bad idea for multiple reasons. One, because of what's happening now. That was a risk, right? He was going to get fed up. He's going to realize, I'm 35 years old. I have a finite amount of basketball time left. Why am I wasting it here? Even if you take the money out of it. But beyond that, for the Heat, why are you wasting another year? Why are the Heat wasting another year with this build? Even with kind of what they've gotten what they've hoped for in Tyler Hero, right? This is the Tyler Hero they've been waiting on for 3 years. Even with that, this team is mid. It's like the definition of mid. It's an average team. Wes and I, we talk about this all the time. They're going to beat a good team once every 3 weeks. They're going to lose to a bad team once every 3 weeks. This is who they've been for 3 seasons now. What was the plan? What was the plan other than you're honestly wasting everyone's time for another year by doing what they did with Jim?
I know I agree. David, I'm curious because I know you were optimistic about this team kind of going into the season. I thought, in hindsight, I suppose
you still every now and then I'm having a normal day, and then I remember that David said the Heat would have beat the Celtics last year.
Damn right.
The first time, and it just derailed.
I still believe it.
Keep your mouth shut, David. Yeah. If you're not going to be out there playing,
no. I'm saying had they been healthy, I still think they would have had a chance. Certainly much more competitive than what it was, but I don't know. You're making it sound like a plan has to be one that's a clearly defined vision of what this team is capable of doing for the next 5 years. And I get that prospect, but so much of what the Heat have been able to accomplish over the last 5 years feels like it's kind of all up in the air, and it's been, I think, wildly successful. And some would argue, as they have, that it's the second most successful era in Heat history in terms of their ability to do finals and stuff like that. So third, because they didn't get a title out of it.
Yeah, I mean, the Shaq, Dwayne, the big three, those two are ahead.
I would. This is a controversial. No one wants to hear this because everyone's focused on championships. I think this is a better era of Heat basketball than.
I agree,
and especially because that Shaq thing was. Look at the 21st century champions. That one really sticks out like a sore thumb
as the best.
Just an alternate, exactly. Just a complete group of mercenaries that had a few months of great basketball and then were never heard from.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so 2 or 3. But to your point, David, go ahead. Sorry,
no. So given that, it feels like that didn't require a plan. I feel like I've said this many times before, and I stick by it. 2019 was such a fluke. They were much better, much more quickly than they expected to. And the plan kind of went ass over tea kettle as a result, because they just didn't know what to do next. Like, they were thinking it was going to be a slower rebuild. They didn't expect Jimmy to be great in his first season. I think they didn't expect Bam to be as good as he was in his first season as a full-time starter, nor did they expect Tyler to be the kind of player he wound up being. And so they wound up achieving much more success much more quickly than imaginable. And so there was no plan. They were kind of just flying by their seat of the pants every season throughout all this, throughout the whole Jimmy era.
I love going to live sports events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. I have fond memories of going to theater, growing up, going to sports with my family, my grandparents. Really helped me fall in love with football, the energy, the excitement. It's unforgettable. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Ohio State must do whatever it takes to beat Texas.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
But before we get to any of that, Ohio State must do whatever it takes to beat Texas to keep their pursuit of a national championship alive. Texas is just the next team in the Buckeyes' way as they pursue and chase a national championship. It's been the mission all season, is to win the Natty. Now, there's been some obstacles. There's been some things along the way that have upset Ohio State that has caused some frustration. There's also been a lot of success. All of that has led Ohio State to this point right now where they're one game away to being in the national championship game, which is huge. Being in the Final Four is huge. But Ohio State can't take it for granted. Ohio State can't change and go away from the mission that Ryan Day set out for the Buckeyes at the beginning of the playoff, which is to do whatever it takes. We've heard Ryan Day numerous times say, leave no doubt. Those three words have been in my head the entire postseason run because I believe the Buckeyes have bought into doing whatever it takes and to leave no doubt while they're out there on the field. That's the same thing against Texas. You can look at the numbers. You can look see what they did against Arizona State. You can look and see what they did against Clemson. You can look at their record in the regular season. Yeah, they made it to the SEC championship game. That's great. That's a good accomplishment. While Ohio State didn't make it to the Big Ten championship game, Ohio State is currently playing better than Texas, which is why the Buckeyes' regular season and the previous two games, those mean a lot, but you can't buy into that. Neither from Texas's narrative, from Ohio State's narrative. You can't buy into all of that. Buy into what you have seen lately, and what you have done for me lately, not me personally, but what the Buckeyes have done for themselves is play great football. Now, I'm not one that uses that word great a lot. But that's how I describe Ohio State and how they played recently. They have come out and set the tone. They have come out and been very, very physical. They have played fast. They have played violent. They have played smart. All the things you want from a football team, Ohio State is displaying those right now. And for Texas tonight, Texas is coming in. They're not too far from home. They have snow down there in Dallas, which is another wrinkle and obstacle for both teams, not just the Ohio State Buckeyes. But Texas is going to come in confident. They have an offensive lineman back that wasn't able to go against Arizona State. So they're a stronger team. They are all bought in on the mission that Steve Sarkisian has set them out to accomplish this year. However, it's the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's not just the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's the Buckeyes that are playing in a way that I don't believe the formula that Ryan Day has right now is able to be cracked by Texas. I do not. Texas will have to play an A++ game to beat Ohio State. Do I see that happening? No. Do I think Texas has played an A++ game this year? Not really. I think there's been some issues here and some issues there. They're here in the Final Four, which is why I say the stuff that happened previously, it matters for the story of the big picture. But for right now, neither team can focus on what's happened previously. they must focus on right now. For Will Howard, for Quinshon Judkins, Tre'Von Henderson, the O-line, the D-line, Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom, everybody on this team, they must keep the whatever it takes mindset in this game. If Ryan Day or Chip Kelly says, Will Howard, you're running the ball 10-plus times, go do it. If they say, hey, Cardell Tate, you're getting 7 or 8 targets, make sure that happens. Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Buka, they're going to get their touches. I still think you got to target Jeremiah Smith a lot. Going to touch on that very aspect later on in today's show. But Ohio State and the players, while the game plan for Oregon and for Tennessee worked, I believe the game plan tonight's going to work as well. But there might be some different looks. There might be some different wrinkles. There might be some things that we have not seen Ohio State do, and they may call for certain guys to be a bigger piece of the pie. That's okay. That's simply whatever it takes for tonight's game. If Jim Knowles uses 3 down linemen versus 4, cool. Whatever it takes, Jim Knowles, keep that thing moving. And for Ohio State and Ryan Day, there's a belief right now that this team is not just on a mission, but everybody is bought in. And I don't know if that's something we would have said 2 months ago or a month and a half ago. But right now, everybody is bought in, from the players and the coaches. And I think everyone has the whatever it takes mindset. Play violent, play fast, play physical, and just do whatever is needed. If it means going up-tempo offense, great. If Ryan Day wants to go back to the slow, methodical approach on offense, which I don't think is what he should do, but if it is what he decides to do tonight, roll with it. If you get up big, keep your foot on the gas and keep pushing and keep pursuing that big margin of victory tonight, because I believe Ohio State can blow Texas out. I think if Ohio State's playing their best and Texas does the things that they did the past couple of games, I think Ohio State is head and shoulders better than Texas right now. And I'm not here to just throw hot takes out. I'm not here to just say, well, I'm an Ohio State guy. No, the film shows me that Will Howard is very efficient. There's only one Jeremiah Smith. There's only one Emeka Buka. They happen to be on the same team. There's only one Carnell Tate. There's only one Brandon Ennis. All 4 of those guys happen to be playing tonight against Texas, might be playing at the same time. It wouldn't shock me now a little bit, but I wouldn't be mad if they rolled out there and went 4 wide tonight and just changed things up completely, because that's not the norm. Ohio State generally has at least 1 tight end out there. Occasionally they have 2. Sometimes we have seen 14 personnel, 1 running back, 4 tight ends. That's not the norm. But Ohio State and Chip Kelly, just do whatever it takes, man. Like, that's just the main mission we have seen so far this year. And that should be exactly the focus tonight. Do whatever it takes. And if that's the case, if the Buckeyes keep on the same mission and realize the mission hasn't changed, at the end of the day, they'll be lifting up that Cotton Bowl trophy and preparing to play either Notre Dame or Penn State in the Cotton Bowl. At the time of this recording, that game is not even kicked off yet, so we don't know even who's at the upper hand right now in the game, because we're recording before that game starts, because your boy wants to watch as much of that game as he can, because that's a big-time game. That's one of those games that if you were a college football fan of the 80s or the 90s, you realize Notre Dame and Penn State is huge. And those 2 teams in the Final Four, 2 black head coaches as well at the FBS level, stuff we've never seen before. I'm here for the history. I am here for whatever James Franklin and Marcus Freeman do tonight. And I'm here for a good game. I am simply here for a good game. And my pick for that game wasn't really planning on doing this right now, but since it's on my mind, I got Penn State. I got James Franklin, big game James, going in there, down there at the Orange Bowl, it beating Notre Dame tonight, 20-17, and Penn State will advance to play either Ohio State or Texas in the national championship. I know that may shock a lot of you, but for some odd reason, with the injuries that on Notre Dame's side, I have a thought and a belief that Penn State will get it done tonight. I also believe Ohio State's going to get it done tonight. I'll spell my score prediction one more time later on in the show, but I think with the way Ohio State's playing, physical, violent, fast football, everyone's on the same page, everyone has a whatever it takes mindset. I think that's the calling card for Ohio State to beat Texas tonight in the Lone Star State as they continue their march to win a national championship.